Wrestling fans, promoters, wrestlers, and anyone who enjoys pro wrestling now have something new to be excited about. The Wrestling Fans International Association, the WFIA, is back. WFIA is an association that exists to promote, grow, and support professional wrestling throughout the world. Membership is free. Your membership includes a free digital bi-monthly publication of the Wrestling Fan News newsletter, association updates, voting privileges, and much more. Please go to thewfia.org, that's THEWFIA.org, and become a member today. Thank you for joining another edition of Pumps and Thumps, the talk of wrestling. I'm Brian Ferguson. My guest today has been in the pro wrestling business for many years. He started his career in 2000 as trained by the greatest wrestler of God's green earth, Harley Race. He is currently the World League Wrestling Heavyweight Champion, which is promoted out of Troy, Missouri. And he's also held numerous singles and tag team titles from other promotions. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce the current World League Heavyweight Wrestling Champion, Superstar Steve. Steve, thanks for coming on today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Brian, for having me.
Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit. Growing up, are you from Missouri? Are you?
No, I'm not from Missouri. Actually, I'm from I was actually born in California, so I'm billed from California. But I was actually born in California, so it's really not a stretch.
Okay.
Being billed from Hollywood, California is really not a stretch. It's not too far from where I was actually born. And it's probably about a 3-hour drive. I was born in a small town called 29 Palms, California. And if there's any listeners that were in the military, they'll know exactly what that town is all about. It's the largest military base, largest Marine Corps base in the continental United States. Mm-hmm. So that's where I was born. My dad was in the Marine Corps. And growing up, I moved around a little bit, mostly in my younger years. As I got older, we didn't move quite as much, but I've lived in California and 29 Palms 3 different times, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Missouri. So my parents are from Springfield originally, and we kind of settled back in Missouri after my dad retired. So that's why I'm here.
Awesome. That is, well, thank you and your family for their service. Your dependents it's a challenging life. It's a very challenging life. Yeah. So
it's different, no doubt.
Yeah, a lot of challenges. So, schooling, did you go to college? Did you, after high school, did you do anything like that?
Go to college, but it wasn't until later in life, actually. So I graduated high school, and even when I graduated high school, I had no idea I was going to get in the wrestling business. I guess growing up, I started watching wrestling in 1987. Right around the time of WrestleMania 3, and I lived in 29 Palms at the time, and a buddy, a childhood friend of ours, was actually into wrestling, and he got me and my brothers hooked on wrestling. And it started with WWF, but it transcended that and quickly moved to reading magazines at the local Post Exchange PX, and just finding out there's worlds, different promotions out there, and flipping through the magazines and seeing all the different promotions and all the different wrestlers that were out there. It was just, as a kid, you're in awe because you don't see all these guys on TV. You just see WWF on TV, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. You get the magazines and you see all these other things that are out there, and you see some of the bloody stuff, like the sheep herders, so some of the brutal stuff that's out there you don't see on TV, because everything on WWF at the time that was even mildly violent like that was censored. I don't know if you remember, there was a program between Outlaw Ron Bass and I want to say Brutus Beefcake, maybe. I don't remember. Outlaw Ron Bass used his spur. He cut somebody open with his spur, and I remember there was a big X across the TV, and the word censored whenever that was going on, that stuck out to me for whatever reason. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, so growing up, kind of followed the WWF more so than anything else. But as I progressed in school, I kind of followed different promotions, and kind of mingled towards friends that were interested in wrestling too, of course. And I remember we would hold mock tournaments. We'd list out all the wrestlers we could ever think of, and
Yeah.
have mock tournaments, and ended up with a one champion to crown them all, right?
That's right.
But so getting back to your question, my schooling, I did go to college. It wasn't until later in life. So I ended up graduating high school. And after I graduated high school, I went straight into construction, actually. And it wasn't until I was in construction for a couple of years that I decided that, hey, if I'm going to do this wrestling thing, I need to do it now.
Yeah.
And so at 20 years old, I started training to be a pro wrestler. Prior to wrestling, actual wrestling, like I started going to the gym, and I started doing cardio at home after work, to prepare myself for wrestling school.
Mhm.
But I never did go to college so I graduated high school in 1996. I didn't go to college until 2009 was when I started my
Okay.
2-year degree. Graduated in 2011 with my 2-year degree, and then got hired at a company, 3M, and they ended up paying for my 4-year degree. So I went and got an engineering degree after I got my 2-year degree. So
Good.
I do have some schooling. I'm
That's
not just a loudmouth in the ring. I'm somewhat educated.
Hey everyone, this is Brian Ferguson. Fans of the AWA, you are in for a real treat. My friend Joyce Poston has just released her book titled My Ringside Seat to the AWA. Joyce writes about her personal experiences with wrestlers such as Nick Bockwinkel, Lord Alfred Hayes, Baron Von Raschke, and others. Joyce also has published many photos from her collection that you will not see anywhere else. Order today by email at joyce.postion@gmail.com. Payment is through PayPal. The book is only $20 plus $6 shipping and handling. International orders, please email Joyce for shipping charge. Folks, run, don't walk to your keyboard, and order today. And enjoy the podcast. And that's all right. I didn't go to college till I was in my mid-30s, so it's good. Better late than never, right? That's the way I
Yep,
look at it.
exactly. That's what I was always told.
Yeah, better late than never. So let me ask you this. Being trained by Harley Race
Mhm.
at the Harley Race Wrestling Academy, probably at that time was probably either in Eldon, or did
It
you
was
go?
Melbourne,
Okay.
yeah. So I
Small
started training.
town.
Yeah, the original location was on Maple Street in Eldon,
Yeah.
and that's where I started training at.
Let's talk about your training. What was that like? Training with a legend like Harley Race. I mean, yeah, I can believe it was awesome, but we got to hear about it.
Well, Harley, actually, when I went in for my tryout, um, I think I was the only guy that was actually trying out that day. There may have been one other guy, I don't recall now, and it was 23 years ago, almost
Yeah.
4 years ago. Um, but there was two or three other people that were already in the business. One was Tim Warcloud. Uh, I don't remember the other guy. There was several guys that were already in the business that were already doing shows at the time. And Skippy Johnson, who was a referee at the time, was the one that was running everybody through their tryout stuff. But like I said, like I mentioned a little bit ago, before I started training to become a wrestler, I was doing stuff to prepare myself. I did my
Mhm.
homework, and so I was running roughly 2.5, 3 miles every day after I got off work, and working construction. You're in the elements all day, so I would be out working in the heat, in the summertime, working in the 90, 100-degree heat, and then I'd come home and I'd go for a run, and it didn't bother me at the time. I'm sure it would now, but
Yeah.
yeah. it didn't bother me at the time, but I mean, I've always been in good cardiovascular condition, but back then I was way ahead of most people.
Mhm.
And so when I went through their tryout, I was breezing through everything. And after talking to Tim Warcloud later on, I don't remember the time frame, but sometime after that tryout, talking to him, he was like, "Man, we hated you." Skippy, who was the referee at the time for WLW, was running the training, and he was trying to blow me up, which in turn was blowing everybody else up because they couldn't keep up with either one of us. I remember Tim telling me, "Man, we hated you. Skippy was trying to blow you up and he couldn't do it, and so it was blowing all of us up in the process, and we did not like you one bit." But
Did you ever wonder what could have been with the AWA had things gone differently? Had their fortunes gone differently? Had certain wrestlers not left and perhaps more money would have been at the disposal of the Gagnes? Well, wonder no further. You can go to Brad Drake's YouTube channel and experience the 1987 Supermod for yourself, as Brad Drake starts off in May 1987 along with Greg Gagne, Baron von Raschke, Vern Gagne himself, Nick Bockwinkel, Larry Zbyszko, Kurt Hennig, and a slew of others as he plays and saves the AWA.
I remember, we was doing either bends and thrusts, or we was doing some kind of exercise, and I remember Harley coming out. I didn't realize he was even there, but I remember him coming out from the back and sitting on a couch. I don't know, he was like 10 feet from me, maybe. He just sat there and was watching. I was like, holy shit, that's Harley Race. And that's really the first time I ever had seen him. I'd gone to the school one time before just to get some information, and that was kind of a story in itself. I walk in one night while they was training. Derek Stone was running training, and he was in the ring with Trevor Murdoch, Trevor Rhodes, Trevor Murdoch, and there was a couple other guys that were training, and they were running through drills. But just as soon as I walked in, everybody went dead silent, and they just looked at me. And I walked in not knowing any different, right? I just walked in, I sat down on the couch that I just told you that Harley sat down on. I sat on the couch, and Skippy turns around from the ring and he goes, "Can I help you out, brother?" And I was like, "Oh, I just want to watch you guys. I just want to watch training." "Oh, sorry, it's closed practice. We don't let people watch." So I was like, "Oh, well, I was thinking about coming down to train, just looking for some information on the school." And so that's really when my first taste of seeing the ring up close. But Harley wasn't there at that time. Like I said, the first time I ever met Harley was at the tryout itself, which was probably a month. It was longer than that. So I always give March 1st of 2000 as my official start date for training. I know it was right at the beginning of March. I don't know that it was the first. It was within the first week for sure. But yeah, I mean, just being there and being in the presence of Harley, who, if you ever met him, I mean, I think he just commands respect.
Oh yeah, yeah,
I think most people probably would anyway, but
yeah.
for whatever reason, just being in his presence, he just has that persona that, I mean, you can't help but respect the guy and what he's done in the business. And I had read a lot of history on wrestling through Meltzer's newsletters, so I knew who Harley was. I never saw a lot of him growing up, but I knew who he was. And I knew what he'd done in the business. So, I mean, obviously the respect level was already there, but just to see him up close and in person, it's kind of awe-inspiring, really.
Right. No, I agree. I met him, oh my gosh, 10, 11 years ago. And yeah, I just saw him and I just kind of felt like, starstruck.
Yeah.
And, I was kind of just standing there, and he said something to me, and I said, "How are you, sir?" And then I had one of those action figures I wanted him to sign for me, and make it out to me personally. And he got no problem. took it, signed it, talked to me for a minute, and I was just starstruck. I was this guy like, I'm in front of Harley Race, you know. So I understand.
It's
So
pretty crazy for everything he's done in the business,
yeah,
and for everything he's seen, done, been a part of. He's the most down
mhm,
to earth guy you could ever met.
yeah,
Pretty crazy.
yeah. I mean, yeah. It's yeah. He's a nice guy. I really enjoyed being around him, and I noticed too. Whenever you guys had shows, I'll go back here in a minute. But when you guys had shows, like I was at Fort Leonard Wood for a while, so when you guys would come into town there at, um, I think you were at St. Robert one time. This was years ago.
There's a bar,
And Rick Steamboat.
right?
Pardon me.
Wrestling in a bar there in St. Robert, didn't
Yeah,
he?
or something. Yeah, yeah. I think Rick Steamboat was there or something. It was a while back, but again, he just talked to me, and Rick Steamboat did, which was kind of a starstruck thing too. Because I'm like, Rick Steamboat, my God. But again, so let's talk a little bit if we could. I'm going to circle back a little bit. Your first match,
Yeah.
what was that like for you?
My first match was on May 20th of 2000. I know this because it was my sister's birthday.
Okay.
There was a guy named Deputy Dell Heiser who was, I mean, that was his ring name, but he was an actual deputy for Miller County, which is the county that Eldon's located in. So he was a county sheriff, and he trained to be a wrestler. And by the time I started training, Derek Stone was not there anymore. He had a falling out with Harley and BJ, and he left. And so another guy named Jay Hanna had taken over training, but I don't think Jay Hanna was there every night either, because he was kind of starting to have some issues as well, some mental health issues that eventually led to him leaving. But Malaya Hisaka was there quite a bit. She lived at the lake for probably a year or so, and
Mhm.
for pretty much every show. But Malaya was running a lot of trainings, and Skippy, the referee, was running a lot of trainings also. But they would always brag about Deputy Dell, about Dell being he's going to be so good and blah blah blah. It was always about Dell, and that was really my motivation for getting better, was always hearing about Dell and what a
Mhm.
step and how they couldn't wait for him to start doing shows, right? So that motivated me to get better. Well, as it turns out, that's the guy I had my first match with. So, May 20th of 2000, we had a show at Bagnell Dam. So it was at a campground below the Bagnell Dam, and it was an outdoor show, and it rained. So, whatever hopes we had of having this great 5-star match for two guys that had maybe 2 matches under their belts by this point in time, and none for me, right? This is all Dell already. Whatever high hopes we had for a great match went out the window, because a wet ring is a dangerous ring. And so
yeah.
we had a match, and I believe it went to a 15-minute time limit draw. It may have been 20, but I think it was 15. But I mean, by the standards of I can tell you, by the standards of what I saw in North Carolina a couple of nights ago at a show, it was a 5-star classic. But looking back from my own perspective, it probably wasn't that good of a match. A being my first, and B being Dell's, I don't know, third maybe match.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
everybody's got to start somewhere.
That's right, and you gain experience from it, Hello, everyone. This is Brian Ferguson, the host of Bumps and Thumps, the talk of wrestling. I want to tell you about a new podcast out called Fouls Count Anywhere. It is a classic pro wrestling podcast that brings you the legends of wrestling with true wrestling fans Chris DiCarlo and Charlie Turner. They bring on guests that are legends in this business, and as well as wrestlers of today, promoters, referees, you name it. They have them on there, folks. And I encourage you to listen to them. If you're on YouTube, watch them. They drop every Saturday. They have their podcast. And they drop it in the afternoon. So look forward to that podcast coming out. Falls Count Anywhere podcast with Chris DiCarlo and Charlie Turner. Folks, you will not be disappointed. I guarantee it. And enjoy the podcast. You start getting in more into your craft, let's say, and I saw when I was doing some research on you, you were with some groups. I'll talk about that a little bit. What was that like going for you? You know, you were at TCW for a while, New Breed, Kansas City up there at Metro Pro.
Yeah.
What was that experience of like getting into different promotions and gaining that knowledge? What was that kind of like for you? That like, were you a sponge, or did you just kind of like?
I tried. So I think for the most part, I didn't want to wrestle for anybody besides Harley because it was Harley. And talking with some of the other guys that had wrestled outside of WLW, there was just a lot of crap out there, and it was easy to get hurt. And after going, like, I tell you right now, some of the worst wrestlers I've ever seen were down in Arkansas. So after having some of those guys, I realized what they were talking about. And like, everybody's at a different level, right? But you have to take pride in your work if you're going to do this business. If you're not taking pride in your work, then you're just wasting your time. And there's so many people to see that don't take pride in their work. They're just out there hoping that what they're doing is going to be great, right?
Yeah.
So now I'm kind of veering off.
That's all right. That's all right.
But so I started with WLW, and really the first group I wrestled for outside of WLW regularly was Central States Wrestling in Lawrence, Kansas. And yeah, by that point in time, this is probably 2001, late 2001, early 2002. I'd already went to Japan, been to Japan a couple times by that point in time.
Wow.
So I don't know if you want to talk about that before we get into this.
No, go ahead. We'll talk about that in a minute. We'll circle back.
Okay. So I'd already been in Japan. I'd already trained in Japan, and was getting out doing some other stuff. But I mean, I didn't care at that point who I was working. And I didn't care if I was winning or losing, to be honest with you, either. I never have cared if I win or lose for the most part. I mean, there's some people that I probably have been like, no, I'm not putting that guy over. But for the most part, I can care less if I win or lose because I can get over myself. I know how to get over, and I can get over in a match regardless of whether I'm winning or losing, right?
Right.
So a lot of the shows I would do, you know, I started off with Central States, and I actually wrestled regularly for Central States, but I would do a lot of one-off shows for groups here and there. So TCW, Matt
Rivera.
Yeah, Matt Riviera's group. That was a one-off shot, which small side story. They had Bobby Eaton on that show. And when I walked in and was introducing myself to everybody, I didn't see Bobby anywhere, but Bobby came up to me and introduced himself to me. You know, he come up to me, he's like, "Hey, how you doing? I'm Bobby Eaton." I'm like, "I know who you are." Introduce yourself to me, man. But yeah, a lot of the shows I did were one-off shows, and a lot of the one-off shows, if I could work somebody from WLW, I did. My original tag team partner, Matt Murphy, all that Matt Murphy got us booked on quite a few one-off shows. And a lot of times I would work him, or we would take one of the younger guys that was training and work one of the younger guys that was training, just so that we could wrestle somebody we knew wasn't going to hurt us.
Yeah.
But it kind of blossomed from there.
Yeah.
Ended up doing a Ring of Honor show in 2003, and by that time I'd already done quite a few tours of Noah. And unfortunately, it's just a one show deal, and they never brought it back in after that. But yeah, I mean, just the goal in the business is to learn and to get better, right? So you have to
Yeah.
take a show, no matter who you're wrestling or where you're wrestling, and you have to try to build something that is going to help you to learn,
Mhm.
build what you're learning, and that's always been my goal.
Yeah.
Uh, Harley used to say, "The marquee says wrestling, and if you can wrestle, you can go anywhere." And no truer words were ever spoken.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, I can't say enough. I mean, I've been to your guys' promotion when you were in Eldon. I live in Springfield now, Missouri, so it's a little farther drive to get to Troy. But I just want to say before we kind of move on to your Japan story, I saw it last time I really saw you was probably, it's been a while. You were in Kansas City, or I'm sorry, um, uh, outside of Kansas City. There, you were at a like a event outside. It was about, I think it was 2015 or 2016, and that was the first time I had, saw you wrestle. And I can just remember how really, and I'm not just saying that because you're on here. I was really impressed with your skills and stuff, and your not just your in ring ability because you were a heel at that time. So your some of your comments were pretty funny. I'll put it like that. Because some guys were in the crowd were harassing you, rousing you up, and you had some good comebacks to them. I will say that.
This
And
is the thing about being the heel is you could say whatever you want and do whatever you want, and you're
yeah,
our bad guy. So
yeah, and that's and I've seen you a few times since then, but that's where I really got to see you, and I've always wanted to have you on here, and I was just glad we were able to finally, I reached out to you, and you said, yeah, we got it going, so I'm very happy about that. But circling
okay.
back a little bit, yeah, you got,
Let me
I
touch back a
mean,
little bit too before you
yeah,
continue on here. So, like I said, I use Deputy Dell as my ammunition to better myself coming
mhm,
up, but it really wasn't long before I was already past the point that he was at,
mhm,
and in order to get better in this business, you got to wrestle guys that are better than you because they will bring you up to their level while teaching you what they know. And then you find the next guy and the next guy and the next guy. Well, once I got to the stage or the point where I was already as good as, or not, if not better than Dale, that guy turned out to be Trevor Rhodes, who's now Trevor Murdoch, right?
Murdoch, yeah, mhm,
Trevor and I pushed each other, I mean, nonstop. And I can't tell you how many tag matches we had, quite a few singles matches too, but mostly tag matches between any combination of me and Matt Murphy versus him and Bull Schmidt or him and Wade Chisholm or him and a sporadic partner that Harley threw him with versus one form of me and Matt Murphy or me and Ace Steele or me and Derek McQuinn. I mean, it was a never ending. It seemed like it went on forever where we was always wrestling each other, whether it be a
yeah,
singles tag match. And we just had that chemistry where we pushed each other. And it bettered both of us. He wanted to be
yeah,
better than me, I wanted to be better than him, and in the process we both won because we both got better. you know
yeah,
and that's kids in the business that are just starting in the business. That's what you need. You need to find yourself somebody that's going to push you to better you. You need to find somebody you need to try to be better than, and you need to find somebody that will in turn try to be better than you, because
mhm,
that's what's going to make everybody better. Not just you and that guy, but it's going to be whoever you wrestle from that point forward and whoever that guy wrestles from that point forward, because now you're going to start bringing other people up too.
yeah. Very good piece of advice for people. Speaking of which, I know we want to get to the Japan thing, but I got to talk to you about a young man I spoke to a few months back. Spoke very highly of you as a mentor, as a person to look up to, and that was he calls himself the astonishing one, Austin Molitalo. That young man, I can't. He could not say enough about you, and I want to know your thoughts on him. I mean, he's very young and he hasn't been in the business for very long, and I think he's a real up and comer. I've seen him a few times now, and I'd like to know your thoughts about him.
He is. He's an up and comer for sure. Like you said, he's young and he's young to the business. He's only been wrestling for probably a year and a
Yeah.
half, maybe 2 years. So
Mhm.
I actually wrestled him in his second ever match. Leland Race wrestled him in his first match down in Arkansas, actually. I wrestled him the next week or the next night. I don't remember. Second match. So I've wrestled him probably 5 or 6 times.
Mhm.
He's a kid that wants to learn. And
Mhm.
those are the people I like helping, because if you want to learn, I know you're committed. I know you're going to listen to the advice I give you. I've heard many times over the years how when Jim Cornette was running OVW, he would tell the guys that were under contract if they were doing something wrong, he would give them advice on whatever it was 3 times. And after the third time of him telling them, he stopped telling them, because he figured if they weren't going to change it, then he was just wasting his breath. If they weren't going to change it after 3 times of being told, then he was wasting his breath. And to an extent, that's how I feel too. You can only tell a guy so many times that, hey, don't do it this way because of this. Don't do this because this is what's going to happen if you do that.
Yeah.
You can tell them so many times, and then you are wasting your breath. They're not going to change. People are creatures of habit, right? And I'm
Mhm.
guilty of it too. Don't get me wrong. I have
Yeah.
stuff that I'm setting my ways on, and even in the ring, I have stuff I'm setting my ways on. And if somebody came and told me to change this, I would at least listen to them. And I may not do it, but I would at least listen to them. But I know Austin wants to improve, and Austin does take that information, and I think he does actively try to improve on the stuff that I give him advice on.
Mhm.
And those are the people I respect. Those are the
Yeah.
people that are the future of the business. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
turned 45 years old, so I'm not going to be doing this forever.
I'm
I
a
need
little ahead of you, buddy. I'm a little ahead of you, but that's okay.
we need guys to take over that are going
Yeah.
to A, respect the business and the people
Yeah.
that are in it, but B, continue on the traditions of wrestling, not just the sports entertainment and the stuff you see
Right.
on TV today. And
Right.
I think he's really one of those guys. So
Mhm.
it's the type of guy that I like teaching. And I see myself as a teacher at this stage in my in
Yeah.
my I just want to help other people, because I've been places, I've done things, I've worked
Mhm.
guys that these people may never get to work. I've worked guys
Mhm.
on levels that these guys may never get to work. And
Mhm.
Do you ever wonder what would happen if, well, if
If you give a dad a podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Just settle this debate right here, right now. It's not even just the greatest PlayStation game. It's the greatest game ever.
Not to toot my own horn, but
exactly.
Yeah, I remember he kicked me so hard I thought I owed him money.
I love it. I'm excited for this one.
He goes, "What is your name?" And I was like, "It's Thrash."
I'm getting punched in the face on the daily.
Man, this guy will shut up.
I wear that as a badge of honor.
Yeah, I got knocked out cold in that match. It was awesome. So awesome.
We make dogs sing.
Do you always do these interviews with your shirt off?
Going live in 3, 2, 1.
So now we've been filming for the last 6 months.
I panicked.
Followed by.
Bro.
If You Give a Dad a Podcast, available everywhere podcasts are found.
so I'll tell you a story. One time, Steve Regal was on a show that Harley did. He was working. It was 2009. He wrestled Ace Steel on the show, but I went up to Regal in the locker room and I said, "Hey, nice to meet you. My name's Steve. I just want to thank you." So it was like a 3-day camp, and then at the end of it, they had a wrestling show, right? And it was WWF, Pro Wrestling Noah, WLW agreement. And as part of that, WWF or WWE would send somebody to scout talent. And at least give a talk to the guys. Well, it happened to be Regal that year. And so he ended up working Ace Steel on the show at his own request, which is a feather in the cap to Ace, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I go up to him before the show and I say, "Hey, I was listening to you talk and give advice to the guys yesterday. And I really appreciate it." I said, "I'm not trying to get in WWF or WWE at this stage of my life, but I like to take the advice that you guys give, and I like to try to incorporate that to make the local product that much better." And I think he thought when I first came up to him that I was looking for contact information to send a tape somewhere or something. But you could see the change on his face after I told him that I appreciate the advice. the change on his face was just, I mean, night and day different. And he's like, I'm glad I can help you. You know, thank you for listening to me. I appreciate the fact that you came up and introduced yourself to me now, and that you thank me for the information, because I like to see the stuff that I'm saying is actually going to good use too. And that's kind of the point where I'm at in my career now, is I want to help the younger guys.
Yeah.
But I don't want to waste my breath. I want the information I'm giving them to go to good use and to actually be used, and to make the local product that much better. Because if the local product's better, the promotion draws better, then the boys are going to get paid more money, which if anybody knows anything about or doesn't know anything about the local pro wrestling scene or indie wrestling scene, the guys don't make much money. So if they can make a little bit more, then mission accomplished.
Yeah. No, I want to ask you this. Are you maybe foreseeing in the future, once you get out of your in-ring career, would you have the idea of possibly becoming a trainer at the academy there or somewhere, and be a trainer / mentor or something of that kind of a role?
Probably nothing on a full-time basis. But I mean, I'm always open. If I'm at a show somewhere and a guy wants to talk to me about psychology or character development, or if a guy wants to talk to me about anything to better himself, I'll always sit and talk to a guy. And I'll give them the best advice for the level they're at, or advice to aim for this right here. And once you get to that, then we can talk some more, and I get you to the next step, you know. I think the business hurts bad enough. If I wrestle once, I'll be sore for several days as it is. So I couldn't do anything during full time, but definitely be on hand to give advice and to help guys improve themselves for sure.
Right. I was just wondering, because, you know, you talk about mentoring guys and how you like to do that and take your advice. I didn't know if maybe in the future, maybe not being in the ring per se, you know, taking the bumps, but maybe watching on the outside while the other trainers are in there doing their training, and then afterwards you do like a little after action review, if you will, and say, hey, you know, you guys did great, you know, and maybe tell somebody, you know, maybe work on this a little bit more, or something like that. You know, I know a lot of you guys have been in this for a long time. You're sore, you're tired. I get it. I mean, I've never done it, so I can't say per se I know how it feels, but I've talked to enough of you that once you're in this business 5-6 years, you know, there's aches and pains, and so I understand that. So
you can take the boy out of the business, but you can't take the business out of the boy, I guess.
There you go.
Good saying. So I'll always be most likely I'll always be involved in the business in one form or another. But the advice will never stop. If I see somebody doing something wrong, I have to say something to them. Let me rephrase that. If I see somebody doing something wrong and I think they have the potential to do better, I'm probably going to say something to them.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Now we could circle back to Japan, because going to Japan, or getting even to go over to Japan, is hard enough from what I've been told before. If you get invited to go to Japan, or a promoter sends you over there, that says something about you, that you have potential.
Right.
That you have that it factor, or you're developing that it factor. Talk about your time over in Japan, if you would, there, Steve, and what things you guys, what was it like over there for you?
Well, okay, so in order for us to get to Japan, that's probably a bad way of phrasing it. We got to Japan because of Harley.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for Harley having the connections that he had as the NWA champion with Giant Baba and All Japan, we would never have got into Pro Wrestling Noah with Misawa. So that's how we got over there. Bottom line, Pro Wrestling Noah wanted a relationship with Harley because he's Harley race. He was an 8-time NWA Heavyweight Champion, which in Japan is still a huge deal. And so they wanted that relationship, and they wanted Harley on their board for whatever wrestling board they had over there. I don't know how to be honest with you.
Yeah.
A fictitious board, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Oh, they wanted his name, and in order to get his name, he wanted them to use his guys, and Harley ended up being the North American liaison for pretty much any talent going to Japan, going to Pro Wrestling Noah in the United States. They would get booked through him, and he would get a fee for sending guys over, which I think was only like $100 a week per guy that he was sending over, but he was getting a little something out of it. Of course, the guys were getting the exposure and the opportunity to go to Japan, which was phenomenal. So I was about 16 months in the business when I went over the first time, which was in July of 2001. And I didn't think I was good by any means, but I got over there and I had my first couple matches. I realized that I didn't know shit. Their guys were worlds, in my opinion. Our best guy was as good as their worst guy, most likely, in my opinion. And knowing that after the guys started trickling through, so BJ Whitmer and Matt Murphy were the first two guys to go through Harley to go over there. They went in June, and then myself and Bull Schmidt and Matt Murphy and BJ Whitmer all went back in July as well of 2001. And as the guys started going over and coming back, we realized that, hey, we got to pick up our game. Now, if you'll recall, I told you the only way to get better in this business is to wrestle guys that are better than you. That was paramount to the talent level rising in WLW, because we were going over there and wrestling world-class workers and coming back and teaching the guys in WLW the stuff we were learning while we were being taught over there. And that made the whole promotion better as a whole. If you go watch an indie show from top to bottom in the early 2000s, WLW shows, I would put them up against any show out there. And that was really the beginning of WLW taking off and being the best group, definitely in the Midwest, in my opinion.
I agree.
I had to take a drink there. So
that's fine. No,
going over there and learning from those guys, I mean, awesome. I was on 14 different tours, and just getting one tour for some guys was hard, but I went over there, and lucky for me, Big Van Vader was over there pretty much every tour. Too Cold Scorpio was over pretty much every tour, and they both took a liking to me. And Scorpio actually proposed to Misawa that they bring me over and train me in their dojo. And so they talked to me about it and said, hey, is this really what you want? And I said, yeah, because at the time, Chris Benoit was my favorite wrestler, and I knew that he trained in the New Japan dojo, and I wanted to be as good as Chris Benoit, right? I think a lot of people had those thoughts. They wanted to be just as good as Chris Benoit because he was so crisp at what he did. And I saw that as a stepping stone. If I could get my foot in the door and come over here and train in the dojo, then yeah, I'm one step closer to being that much better, right? And so that's what I did. They brought me over and I trained in the dojo for 3 months with Pro Wrestling Noah. And I don't think they had high hopes originally, but I gained their respect pretty quick because the Japanese are big on not quitting in anything. It doesn't matter what it is. And I didn't quit. I didn't give up on myself in anything I did over there. And I think I earned their respect because of that. And I think there were guys that were harder to break the shell on. And it took a little more time for them to come around. But the more I was over there, I think the more they started respecting me. And I think the last tour I was on was in 2008. And I think by that point in time, they all had respect for me. And that was through the hard work that I did. You know, Harley got my foot in the door by getting me over there. And my hard work and my dedication is what kept me over there and is what kept bringing me back. I remember specifically a tour I did, I want to say it was in 2002. I'd come back from a tour. Ron Harris was supposed to go over on the next tour, and Ron Harris had to cancel off at the last minute for whatever reason. And when Harley called and told him that, hey, Ron Harris can't make it because of what XYZ reason, they said, all right, well, we'll get back to you and we'll tell you who we want to come back over. And so Harley was talking to the guy in Hawaii. The guy in Hawaii had to call Japan. By the time they got back to Harley, they said, we want Steve to come back. I just got back like a couple days. They had this conversation a couple days before they had this conversation. And I was working construction at the time. And the company I worked for, I think they tolerated me going over there just because I was reliable work for them. But I think kind of miffed when I just got back from 2.5, 3 weeks being gone. I said, guys, I'm going back to Japan again. Sorry. But I was told that, so I go on that next tour, and the liaison from Hawaii, Ken Hirayama, ends up coming on the tour as well. And when he got there, he told me, he says, this is really huge for them to actually request that you come and replace, you know, the guy that couldn't come. It means they have a lot of respect for you. And that was 100% from the hard work that I had put in. And that's not something you can teach, you know. Respect is earned, it's not given, right?
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, you gotta be raised the right way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you know. So that's an amazing story. I mean, I've heard a lot of things about Japan, and you get respect over there, and they request you to come back. That says a lot about you as a person, as a wrestler.
See, they're also huge on knowing that they're not going to get hurt, and so they would have this camp every year, typically in like, it was in the fall, like August, September, October time frame. They would have a camp, and Noah was at the camp every year, and the grand prize winner at the camp would get to go to Japan and train in the dojo for 3 months or 6 months, whatever it was. And every year they would show up to this camp, and I would hear from Ken every year. You know, Ken would talk to me quite a bit, and I'd hear from him every year. Oh, these guys are so dangerous, because they would see guys with bloody noses, bloody lips, black eyes, because they were potatoing the crap out of each other, trying to impress all these people that were in from Noah. And it wasn't impressing them, you know. I think people have the wrong impression of the Japanese style of wrestling. It is known as strong style wrestling, and they watch it, and it looks stiff as hell, right?
Yeah.
And it can be. Don't get me wrong; it can be for
Right.
sure. But they don't give each other bloody noses, black eyes, busted lips. They don't do that kind of stuff. And when they see these guys hurting each other, the first thing they think of is that guy's not coming over for us. And people never realize that. And so inevitably every year the winner was somebody that was already training in WLW, because they knew that this guy was training there. They're going to be safe. They're not going to hurt our guys. And I think it was kind of a running joke that nobody from outside WLW ever won these things, except for one time. one year there was this kid named Rudy Valley, and I'll hear from him every now and again. He'll send me a text, but Rudy Valley won one year, and the reason he won was because every time they looked at him, he was standing up, stretching. He was doing something to look as though he was preparing to get in the ring. And they respected that because nobody else would do that. You know, we would all have our warm-up exercises we ran through, and then we would start running drills and matches, and you were just pairing guys up. All right, give me this guy, get in there, have a match, right? And everybody would watch, and we critique it. And the next two, you know, everybody's sitting around the ring still while this is going on. And this is going on for a couple hours. And so if you're two hours into this and they call you to get in the ring, well, your muscles are cold now, which means you're going to run the risk of pulling a muscle, right? And every time they looked over, Rudy was stretching because he was trying to stay limber, and they respected that. And talent wise, he was not good at all.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh.
It's the facts. And told Harley that they wanted to pick this guy to go train in Japan. Harley was like, you don't want that guy, because Harley knew he wasn't that good. And they're like, no, we want this guy. We want Rudy. And they're like, Harley's like, no, you don't. Well, they eventually won out, and Harley's like, all right, I'll tell you what, you can pick him as the ultimate winner, and that he's going to go over and train on one condition, and that's that he comes and trains with me before he goes and trains with you. And so Rudy came, he moved to Eldon. I don't remember how long it was for. It was probably close to a year he came to Eldon, but he never went to Japan because he never made it past the training that we were offering in WLW to go to Japan. But the one time they chose somebody other than a WLW guy is because the guy was always warming up, stretching, doing something to be limber and ready. And they respected that. They liked it.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty amazing. That's Japan is, like I said, a totally different beast, but you know, they have a lot of good things going on over there. Hey everyone, this is Brian Ferguson, the host of Bumps and Thumps, the Talk of Wrestling. I want to talk to you today about my friends over at Superfriends Signatures. These guys have all kinds of wrestling products, past and present. They sell action figures, autographed pictures, you name it, they have it. My friends David Harrow and Brian Koenig, they are the real deal. Go to their website today, superfriendssignatures.com, or go to their Facebook page, Superfriends Signatures. Check them out, folks. You will not regret it. They have great prices and great deals on all kinds of products. And every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Central Time, they have an auction online at their Facebook page. So please check it out, Superfriends Signatures today, and enjoy the podcast. I want to ask you a couple more questions. One, Steve, is have you ever worked for WWE or AEW or Impact, either as a fill-in or something like that? There's some people that have. I was just curious if you ever have that opportunity.
So I think I had 6 televised matches for WWE where I was enhancement talent, right? I was the guy to make their guys look good. The first time being in 2001, January of 2001, here in St. Louis. It was the Kill Center back then. That's the first time I ever wrestled in front of an actual crowd of people, and I was just in awe. There was 20,000 people in the Kill Center, sold out for Raw, and Matt Murphy and I wrestled Kai and Tai, which was Taka Michinoku and Sho Funaki on Sunday Night Heat. And
Okay.
I'll never forget that, because that's the first time that I wrestled a high profile match like that. But Sho Funaki, from that point forward, always remembered me. A, because I wrestled him, but B, because he found out later that I was going to Noah, and one of his old buddies from a defunct group now, but a group called Battle Arts, was Daisuke Akeda. And he would always ask me how Akeda was whenever I went to the tapings after that. And, just how's Noah, how you like Japan, he would sit there and he would talk to me like a normal person. Whereas most of the guys up there, you might meet them once and I kind of get it to a degree. Like, they wouldn't recognize you or remember you. But there were some guys that didn't even want to, they wouldn't stoop to the level of meeting somebody in my position, some jabroni off the indies. That was just taboo to be associated with somebody like that.
Yeah.
There's some guys up there that I still hold grudges against. I think I hold grudges against because they treated me like shit, in my opinion. But yeah, I think 6 televised matches total for WWE over the years. Quite a few other appearances as security and whatnot. I've never done anything with AEW. I had one show with Ring of Honor, which was a 4-way match. It was me and Ray Gordy, which is Terry Gordy's son, who was also going to at the time. A guy named Chad Collier, and he used Hydra at the time, but dang it, can't think of his name now. Black Machismo.
Jay Lethal.
Jay Lethal, yes.
Yeah,
a 4-way, and it was the first time I've been in a multi-person match like that, so it didn't blow the socks off of anybody. No, it was the first time that Ray Gordy had been in a 4-way match as well. There was nothing wrong with the match, but it didn't knock anybody's socks off that was in the decision making facet, and so I never got to go back after that. But that's basically my high profile matches that I've had for higher companies.
Well, hey, you can say you've done it.
It's more than most people ever do.
But that's right. Yeah, exactly. So, all right. You've been in the business for over 20 years. There's been a shift, I guess I would want to call it, in how things are on TV and at matches. And I will say, like, your promotion and a few others, they still do the old school stuff, which I believe now in the last 4 or 5 years, the indies have really made a comeback as far as people wanting to go to those shows, people wanting to attend, because they don't cost an arm and a leg. They don't, the wrestlers, even if they're a heel or whatever, during the pre-show and intermissions and stuff, they'll come out and sign autographs and take pictures and stuff. Has it turned for the better? Overall the same, or do you think it's less? I want your opinion on how it's shifted and what you think of it.
I don't think it's any worse by any means. Maybe slightly better than when I first broke in. You're always going to have what I call shit promotions that they run a really crappy show. And I actually just went Saturday in North Carolina. They use really low level talent guys that are barely trained that should not be in the ring. They probably should never get in the ring, period. But somebody trained them, and now they're on shows, and now somebody's booking them to be on shows, and they think they're hot shit, and they and that right there is what gives the business a bad name, is poorly trained guys, which is one of the reasons why I try to help guys out. Like I said, some guys are beyond help, and those are the ones I avoid. But if I can help somebody out and help make the business look better, I'm going to. But there's always going to be those groups that run, because anybody that has a wrestling ring can be a promoter nowadays. Anybody that has a wrestling ring can be a trainer nowadays. There is no regulation in the business like there used to be back in the day. You know, back in the 70s, if you wanted to be a pro wrestler, I mean, go back to, if you ever read Hulk Hogan's autobiography, he talks about Hiro Matsuda breaking his leg when he went in to try out for the first time. They said, "Yeah, come on down, kid. We'll show you what it's like." And so he gets in there with Hiro Matsuda, and Hiro Matsuda breaks his leg, and he leaves for however many months until he heals up, and he comes back later and he tries it again, and I don't remember if he got injured the second time, but I mean, that's how they regulated the business back in the day. Everybody knew that wrestling was fake, right? Everybody knew that when I punch you, I'm not really punching you. And when they went down to train, if they went to a tryout somewhere, the wrestlers would show them that, yeah, it's not all fake, buddy. This is how we do it. This is, back in those days, if there was a submission move, and a lot of the submission moves I think are still based on legitimate holds or moves, but they would stretch guys because they had to show them that, hey, this isn't what you think of it, this is what it is. But now it's so easy for guys to get involved in the business because they can go out and buy their own wrestling ring now, and if they have their own wrestling ring, nothing against the Hardy Boys, but the Hardy Boys train themselves. I mean, they went on to do some phenomenal stuff in the business, and I have much respect for them, but they were never trained in the business at all. They trained themselves. And so that makes what they've done even that much better, I think. But they are no doubt the minority, because most of the guys that try to do that look like shit.
The exception to the rule. I agree with you on that. Interesting. I will say, like, probably for me, especially around here and up in St. Louis, Southern Illinois, the promotions, the indies for me have just increased as far as their product twofold. I'm talking about WLW, SICW, New Breed, Mid-States down here. Just quality. You're right. There are some crap promotions, indies, but I think a lot of them now are getting shoved out. I mean, you see a lot more better quality, better training, better promotions that actually care about what they're putting out there. And I will say to you, maybe, 10 years ago, probably WLW and maybe a few others in the state here were probably about it, that were actually legit and cared.
Well,
I think it's got
Missouri's a regulated commission in Missouri, and it is 100% because they wanted to get rid of a lot of the hardcore groups that were running back in late 90s and early 2000s, and they did clean it up to an extent. A lot of those groups moved over to Illinois, where it's not regulated and they don't have to be licensed. And there's a lot of what I call shit wrestling shows that are run over in Illinois now, Southern Illinois, because they can't run in Missouri. There's definitely some quality groups out there, no doubt. And there's definitely some people that run those groups, like you said, Mid-States, WLW, SICW. I think it's Central States now up in Kansas City. The one that's running that. They know that high quality talent will draw people in. It may not be show you run. It may not be the 5th show you run, but over time, word will get out that, oh my God, these shows are kicking butt, man. These are phenomenal shows that we can see here locally that, like you said, aren't going to cost you $150 to take your family to.
Right.
You know, you can see them relatively cheaply. And because of that, and because people got fed up with WWE 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years ago, whatever it was, throwing out all the same shitty stuff that they were throwing out, that there was this indie revolution. And that kind of fueled what you're seeing now on the indies, that you don't have to be on TV to make a whole lot of money in this business. You can be a good worker, and you can be a local worker and still make a decent living if you promote yourself and go out and put in the effort, put in the time, put in all the work, make yourself better, and you'll go places in this business. A lot of people, I don't think, realize that. They think that, oh, I trained and they're going to let me on this show now, so I don't need to train anymore. You know, being on this show is going to be good enough for me. And it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, no, it does not. Good analogy. One last question for you, sir, then we're going to let you go. Tell us a little bit about some upcoming events that you're going to be a part of, if you would, please.
Upcoming events I'm going to be a part of. I don't have dates off the top of my head, but I took off the months of July and August, so I did no shows over those 2 months. I am going to be back in action in September. I believe it's the 9th. I don't recall, but somewhere around the 7th or 9th of September for WLW up in Troy, Missouri.
Okay.
Following week, I'll be in SICW for Herb Simmons. I believe that's in Belleville on Saturday, then TV tapings the next day, Sunday, in East Carondelet, Illinois. I got some. So I work for 3 promotions, basically World League Wrestling out of Troy, Missouri, SICW Herb Simmons out of Southern Illinois, and New Breed Wrestling out of Eldon, Missouri. There's the 3 groups I work for. You could look them all up on Facebook because you don't have dates.
No, that's all right. Hey, no, that's great. No, I'm going to say this, that if you see, and I'm not just saying this because you're on here, but if you see Superstar Steve on the marquee or on the Facebook posts about SICW, World League, or New Breed, go and watch. I've seen him in person. He's a phenomenal wrestler. He is the current World League Wrestling Heavyweight Champion. So if he's on there that weekend of September, if you're near there, get a ticket. I mean, it's worth it. It doesn't cost you an arm and a leg to go. They're good people. The food's pretty cheap too. You don't have to pay $50 for a hamburger and a Coke. So, and the merchandise, support these guys if you're out there. They got merchandise, photos, t-shirts, other items up for sale that don't cost an arm and a leg as well. So one more time, ladies and gentlemen, World League Heavyweight Champion, Superstar Steve, thank you for coming on today, sir. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to get to tell my story to anybody that wants to hear it. So I appreciate you having me on.
My pleasure, sir.
Let me know. I'll be more than happy to come back on.
I appreciate that. I will take you up on that. So, folks, if you're watching, thank you. If you're listening, thank you. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so. And we will talk to you soon.